My 3-unit play, I'm going to probably the game of the week, right? It's up there. Minnesota and Detroit.
Yeah. It's like 3 games that are good.
There are some good ones. Yeah, I'm going to lay the points of the Vikings here. I was like, maybe I want to take the Lions, but then I talked myself into that being pretty square. And actually, the more I dug into it, I think Minnesota, I don't know if they're legit, but I trust the momentum and the direction that they're going right now, and that's kind of probably a weird thing to say after Detroit just beat the brakes off of the Cowboys, but start digging into it.
It was all over that one last week.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Minnesota, much better scheduling spot. They're playing at home, coming off the bye. Detroit traveling 2 weeks in a row. Minnesota in the very limited sample size, 2-0 after the bye under Kevin O'Connell. One of those was last year. They won 3-0, but that was I think that was like a Dobbs game, obviously. So like he does a pretty good job. I think he's a very good head coach. I think he's a guy who can scheme up and with the best of them. And then when you give that to a type of coach an extra week, he's probably gonna have an interesting wrinkle here or there. Minnesota had a chance to get healthy over the last week, too. Sam Darnold had a ribs thing. He's good to go. Aaron Jones sounds like he could play. TJ Hawkinson is ready to make his season debut. And then you juxtapose that on the other side. The Aiden Hutchinson injury might be the most important injury that we've seen so far this season. The thing about the Lions is tough to kind of figure out. It's like, are they giving up points and yards in garbage time? Is the defense not that good? I don't know. Because, like, the EPA numbers, the DVOA numbers are pretty good, but they also give up a ton of yards, a ton of points. The secondary is not very good, and I think that's a flaw that gets even further exposed when you can't rush the passer. Rush the passer. I
feel like we've run into that.
Chris, that's a Collinsworth thing. Collinsworth does it all the time. Hutchinson generated 31 pressures on in pass rush sets. The rest of the team has 56 combined. Darnold is fourth among starting quarterbacks in passer rating when kept clean. I think they find a way to just, if you can't get pressure on that guy, O'Connell's going to find ways to get balls in the hands of his playmakers. And like I just said, it feels like they're going to have a lot of playmakers to which they can get the ball this week. I also think, I have some questions still about Detroit in terms of like how good are they actually. I saw this on CBSSports.com. Really interesting little tidbit. Minnesota has beaten teams with the 2nd, 5th, 9th, and 10th shortest Super Bowl odds per FanDuel Sportsbook. Detroit hasn't faced a team within the top 10 yet this season. Detroit's offense, they've been kind of meh until they got Seattle, 18th by DVOA, and Dallas, 27th by DVOA, and they struggled against the Bucks, Rams, and Cardinals. The best defense in that pack is Tampa Bay. They rank 11th, and obviously Minnesota has the number 1 defense by DVOA and EPA. So I just think that this is, long term, I kind of expect the Lions to get it together, and I do continue to see this being the most competitive division in football, as I said prior to the season when I made that one of my picks. But I think for 1 week, it's going to be tough to get off the mat. I think they kind of have to find themselves. I do think they're one of the more interesting teams going into the deadline. I thought ESPN.com had some really interesting stuff today saying, I think it was Fowler reported that the Lions have already reached out to the Jets about Hassan Reddick, who feels like he's on the block now that the Adams thing is done. They also kicked around names like Chase Young, Josh Uche. So I do think we kind of talked about them as maybe leaning into the offense. Yeah. Maybe now they got to go to pass rusher. If they want to go the offense, one name that was mentioned as well, Jacoby Myers, would be a really interesting fit there with the way that Goff moves the ball around and distributes it. But I think
Jacoby Myers would be a nice pickup for any team.
I love them for that.
He's a great complementary piece to add to an offense.
You look at the Lions, like they just, was it 2 weeks ago, Goff went 18 for 18. It's like they are, when the pieces fit well, they're better than anyone, it feels like. And he's a guy who's not going to upset that. And I actually do think he accentuates it. And that's, he's not going to have 10 catch games, but there's going to be a 3rd and 7 where you need
Jacoby
9
Myers is not Devontae Adams, but like when the dust settles at the end of the year and you look at like the impact that a guy had on his offense or his team, and you'd be like, well, that's comparable, if not better. But the Aiden Hutchinson thing, like, I don't know if we can overstate that injury, just how important that is. Like, I know you mentioned the number of pressures that he's had. Like, I think has like 10, like in terms of total pressures, 10 more than the next closest, and he played in 1 fewer game. Like his win rate is off the charts, and that was an issue that was really like my one glaring concern about Detroit in general before the injury was the pass rush. Like I think that there's still some vulnerability in the back end of that defense, and now if you can't get after the quarterback, maybe that becomes a problem.
Well, it's the best players hide your biggest deficiencies, right? And we saw that for years here with like Tom Brady. They can't run the ball. It's like, all right, well then Brady will throw it 50 times or any number of ways. Does this change the way that you look at the NFC North or the NFC in general? I just said that I think in the long run they're going to be around. Maybe it comes back to haunt them a little bit as it gets closer to the end of the season. I don't think this disqualifies them from the playoff race.
No, because I think their offense is that good when it's clicking, and
almost load up.
And I also think that I look around the conference, and I'm not sure there are that many other teams that I'm like, yeah, they can't beat them. Like even like the favorite in the conference right now, the 49ers. Like we've seen them; they've had some shortcomings.
Sure.
So
biggest competitions in the division.
Yeah, it would have been nice if Hutchinson didn't shatter his leg into a million pieces, and also you were able to add somebody of the one of the pass rushes you mentioned. But I think it might take him a little bit. This is why I was looking at the over in this game, 49.5. Like I think you're going to get some points in this game.
It was just a little too high.
It's high
number.
Yeah, I could see both of these teams putting points up this weekend.
Another personal hell would be watching injuries like the Aiden Hutchinson one on repeat. You're just stuck in a small, dimly lit room.
Isn't it amazing
watch guys
how
break their legs on football fields?
So many of those tweets too are like, if you're squeamish, look away.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever looked away?
No.
Like it's kind of like when people
and Elon's Twitter too. These are what's being accentuated.
Seriously.
But compared to some of the other stuff I've seen on there recently, that's nothing.
It's also like when somebody tries something that tastes awful, and they're like, "Oh, this is gross." Hey, try.
You're like, "Well, I got to try it."
Yeah. Or there, smell this, and it's like, no.
But sometimes you are.
Yeah.
Staying in the NFC North, what's your 2 unit play?
I love this game, by the way. Packers laying 2.5 versus the Texans. This is another one where we can maybe learn a lot about these two potential Super Bowl contenders. But I'm going to lay the points with the Packers at home. Something about Houston, their offense, like I know it's weird to say coming off a 41-point effort against the Patriots, so I just outlined all the reasons why their defense stinks. And also, like you said, they gave away a lot of points there as well. I don't know, like that offense just doesn't feel like it's clicking yet. And I think this could be the week that you start to see the effects of Nico Collins going down. I know Larry Tunsil's banged up. Rushing game just hasn't quite been there. Like you've seen it in spurts, but it's not been a consistency in their game. Yeah, especially on early downs. They're 31st in early down success rate. The only team they're better than is Cleveland, who has like a historically bad offense. Yeah. I have a little bit of concern about the offense, and then on the defense, that they have some key pieces missing as well. I also look at like the track record, like the Houston's wins, Indianapolis, Chicago before their offense really started humming, Jacksonville. Buffalo win was a good win, but if I remember correctly, like Buffalo made a lot of mistakes in that game. Kind of let them off the hook, and then obviously the Patriots in between there, they got steamrolled by the Vikings. So I don't know, just something feels a little off with Houston. I feel pretty good about where Green Bay is at, though. Like the other thing too is like I mentioned the rushing attack. So like I think if the inability for Houston to run the ball is kind of plays into the hands of this game, like they're not going to be able to take advantage of the biggest deficiency on Green Bay. So less than a field goal, I'll lay the points. But I love this matchup, and I love the quarterbacks involved too. This is great. They haven't played yet.
No,
this is a nice CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love. Like when we did our quarterback rankings, I didn't feel like we've done that at various points, but before the year, like I feel like when you get to these two, it's very you flip a coin a little bit.
Yeah, which is probably unfair to both of them. But
yeah,
is that your long way of asking me who I'd rather have?
Sure, I'd love to know.
So I've watched a lot of Love. Obviously, he still kind of has some baking to do. Like you see, I think he's
all right. So I should
one of the best.
Clarify long term,
career. Yeah. But so I think one of the best tweets I saw was talking about watching Jordan Love is like there's somebody who has a a lever on the sidelines that keeps flipping back and forth between Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. And like, if that's the worst he's going to be, like, that's fantastic to have. But I still think he has some of that stuff to kind of get out of his game, and I think he'll get there eventually. He's older. He's been around longer. Stroud came in and is like really doesn't seem to have as much of that. So I think long term, if I had to pick one, I would pick Stroud just because I think he's got more, not room to grow, but I think he's closer to being done at a younger age. So I think there's more surplus value in the long run there. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them because I do think a lot of Love's issues are based on, you put him in an offense with healthy Nico Collins and Steph Diggs, and he's probably going to look a lot like CJ Stroud does right now. So there's a lot of factors you have to consider as well. But like I said, gun to my head, I would take Stroud, I guess. But if we're having this conversation again in like 5 years and we're talking about like the two best quarterbacks in the league, that's going to be sick. Like that's going to be so exciting if these guys keep going on that ascent.
I think I probably fall on that same way. Like I think Stroud probably has more talent. Like maybe that's underselling Love a little bit, but I think that's kind of what you were saying.
I would also maybe saying the same thing as slightly different ways. I do think Love has benefited more from the situation. Not the players. I know I'm kind of like contradicting myself, but
the way he was brought along.
They've built him into that system in a way that maybe hide some of his talent.
It is kind of fascinating when you see that like the way in which each quarterback arrived to where they are now, like where Stroud just comes out guns blazing in his rookie season, and Love sits behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Guy came from a school that wasn't that,
yeah, right. Arrived at this point very different ways, but yet here we are, and they're both neck and neck.
Good problem to have. This would be a fun one.